Welcome to University. I'm Jeff Rader, here with entrepreneur, chef, restaurateur, TV star, author, Tom Colicchio. Tom, welcome. It's awesome to have you here. Thanks so much for being with us. So, as with all of our classes, we're going to start with a couple of icebreakers. What do you wake up for?
What do I wake up for? Morning Joe. My kids. I wake up for my kids. I really do. They wake me up actually, but
Me too.
Morning is I help get them off to school when I'm home, and it's great. In the summer, I wake up to garden. It's become an absolute passion of mine. I literally wake up, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out there.
Do you cook the things that you?
Oh yeah, make? Yeah. We put a garden in we live in the city, but we have a house outside of the city, and we put a pretty good sized garden, and it just became an absolute passion of mine. So that's that, and I wake up to fish. So those are the things that I wake up to do. If I get the kids in the garden and we go fishing together, that's a good day.
I felt like this one was appropriate given your background. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, I had some scrambled eggs that my son rejected and insisted on French toast, so I had his scrambled eggs, and I had a half a yogurt and about 6 cups of coffee.
What's your favorite curse word? How do you use it?
Good. So
that's a popular one.
Recently, I can tell you how I used it. So I was roasted on Monday. I was in Washington. There's two groups, Food Policy Action and Chefs Action Network. They held a fundraiser roast, and so I was roasted. And as I took the stage for my rebuttal, I said, "No, I'm a man of few words." You, and I walked off the stage. Then I came back. But that was how I used it recently.
Got it.
Yeah.
Short but sweet.
Short and sweet.
Wanted to just chat about sort of your early path to becoming a chef and restaurateur. Mm-hmm. When did you decide that you wanted to work with food and be a chef?
I started cooking at the age of 12, 13 at home. And then when I was about 14, I took my first cook's job at my parents belonged to a swim club, an Italian-American swim club in Clark, New Jersey. And there was a snack bar, and there was usually someone would run it for the summer. And I was hired to scoop ice cream and work the cash register. And within a week, I was cooking all the food. Soon after that, my dad suggested I become a chef. And that was really it. It was my only choice. I put all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And but so from a very, very young age, I knew what I wanted to do.
And did you then do you undergo formal training to do that, or did you just feel like you're like, look, I got the snack bar on lockdown, I can take this from here?
Yeah, that was exactly it. No, what happened was I through high school worked in restaurants in the summer and on weekends, but in the front of the house as a busser. And then right out of high school, I started cooking. And all the while, thinking I may go to culinary school. And before they accept you at the CIA, you had to work in 2 restaurants. And then 3rd restaurant, 4th restaurant, and then I decided to go to New York, and got a job in a restaurant called the Quilted Giraffe. And back then, this is 1984, 85. It was a 4-star New York Times restaurant, and
were these like hard jobs to get? I mean, were you like trying to work your way up to from one place to the next?
Yeah, at this point, I was a pretty good line cook. I knew how to butcher. Various jobs I would pick up different skills, and so I knew I could hold my own. But this is New York. Now, growing up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, you see New York. It's on the skyline, but it's one of those things where you can't go there. I was there 4 months, and Barry Wine, who was the chef owner, gave me the sous chef job after 4 months. And at that point, I was not going to school.
And then at some point, you went off on your own. You said, "I'm going to build my own restaurants. My own restaurants."
Well, what happened was right around this time, and I knew the rest. So it was 1991. I got Food & Wine Magazine's Best New Chef, and I met Danny Meyer, his chef at Union Square Cafe. Michael Romano was also honored that year, and so I met Danny. And also during that time, he'd been into Mondrian a bunch of times, and a few other people in the organization. And this was back in 91, 92, and he had the one restaurant. And so I called him up and he said, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, maybe we should open a restaurant together. I know you like what I do. I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he said he really didn't want to open a second restaurant. That's interesting, isn't it? and he said he didn't want to open a second restaurant. But a week later he called me back and he said, let's talk. And we took a trip to Italy together. And with this idea that if we could travel together, we could probably work together. So we were in Italy for a week, and on the plane ride back, we kind of sketched out the idea for Gramercy Tavern.
And what happened in Italy that gave you conviction that you guys might want to work together?
Well, we spend a lot of time not so much talking about food or service or wine, things that you normally would talk about when you open a restaurant. We talked about how we wanted to run a restaurant, the kind of people that we wanted to work there, the kind of where we could sort of, how could we disrupt the business? How could we change the restaurant business? We talked about, creating an atmosphere that was, fun, creative, and fair. Because I had Gramercy, I had to do something very different at Craft. And during that time, it was about 14 years ago, during that time, there was a lot of talk about ingredient-driven menus. Everyone was focused on ingredients. And using the farms, it was kind of the beginning of the whole farm-to-table movement. Actually, it wasn't the beginning, but it was when it was kind of codified as a movement. And so I thought, well, okay, fine. Let's really focus on the ingredient. So I'm gonna, and it all started with this idea of a plate of peas. And if peas are fresh and in season, they're sweet, they're delicious, they're just perfect. And I want a plate of peas. I don't want peas and pasta or peas with fish. I just want a plate of peas. And also, you had this idea that if you had your peas, it's spring, all of a sudden you got a delivery in from the farm, and maybe it rained the night before, and so they were washed out. They didn't have much flavor. Now it's springtime, and you have peas on, an appetizer dish, an entree dish, maybe something on the tasting menu. If you're really out there, it's in your ice cream. I mean, who knows? So all of a sudden, you got to change 4 dishes. Well, if you're just serving a plate of peas and the peas aren't in, you take it off the menu. That's it. So then I said, well, if I just want a plate of peas, then everything has to be served family style. And so that's how sort of the idea and how Craft started, where everything was served, where it was one single ingredient, and everything was served family style. So in the first iteration of Craft, and we're kind of moving back there, if you order a black sea bass, you got a piece of black sea bass, perfectly roasted, some olive oil, fresh herbs, sea salt, done. That was it. No sauces, no garnishes. And so we're really honoring the ingredient. And it was novel at the time. And so that's what made Craft very different than any other restaurant out there at that moment. So we have Gramercy, Craft. I leave Gramercy. So now I'm just doing this simple food, and now I'm on TV. And I'm critiquing other chefs. And all of a sudden people started coming into Craft because of the TV show, going, this is really simple. Like, I don't get this. It's like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And you start hearing that a little bit. And you're also, because now you're on TV, all of a sudden, people are, you hear the grumblings, oh, he's sold out. He's not in the restaurant anymore. He's not in the kitchen anymore, which is not true. I mean, TV takes about 6 weeks of the year to shoot. So
got it.
And so I decided that I was going to do something in a private dining room at Craft. And this was also during the recession, it was like probably 2008, I guess. And so I started doing this thing called Tom's Tuesday Dinner. And it was this multi-course meal. We only did about 35 covers, and we did it every other Tuesday. And so it was a big hit and hard to get into. And I was doing food that was just much more, it was technical and
were you cooking it?
Oh yeah, I was back there.
Like making...
It was an open kitchen. No, I was back there cooking, which chefs don't do because we conduct when we're in the kitchen. But I was actually in there plating dishes and stuff. And it was a blast. It was great. And I brought in all the chefs from the other restaurants to help me out and do it. So it was like, kind of half cooking, half just having fun. And the dishes were also kind of just loosely put together, meaning that I was just changing them as I would go. It was fun. And but I remember the first one that we did, this woman came up and she said, "Oh my God," she said, "I come to Craft all the time and I had no idea you could cook this way." And I was like, "Oh God, okay." So
you're like, not the concept.
So right around this time, we had Craft Steak over on 10th and 15th Street, and I wanted to change it. It was doing okay, but it was, still during a recession. People weren't buying big steaks, and So that's when Colicchio and Sons was born, because I wanted to start doing that type of food again.
So I'm a college student, and in regards to this, probably just treat me like one, and I'm thinking about opening up a restaurant. What would you tell me?
You're a college student and you're thinking of opening a restaurant.
Yeah.
Any experience at all? Front of house, back of house?
I've cooked a little bit here and there.
Wait.
Get some experience.
Get some experience. I'm not suggesting that you don't open a restaurant, but spend some time in a restaurant working before you open a restaurant, because it's difficult. Number one, the profit margins are much lower than people think. If you eke out 10%, you're doing well. And so
it's a hard business.
It's hard. And a lot of businesses are hard. If you own a business, you work a lot.
They're hard.
It's hard, especially now. And that's pretty much.
And what do you look for in a good chef?
You're looking for someone who who really cares. I mean, someone who is going to show up for to work every day. Someone who's going to put the time in. But it's not one of those things where I'm looking for someone to keep your head down and shut up and don't say anything. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking really for someone who's going to keep their head up, like look at what's going on, learn as much as they can. Someone who wants to contribute, someone who wants to be part of a team, because it really is a team environment in the kitchen. As far as a chef, I think what sets a chef apart, someone that has just a different point of view. Especially now, it's so easy to you see these trends. And it used to take a while for trends to go around the country and maybe even across the Atlantic, because the chef would have to go there and experience the food. Now you open up Instagram and you see everything. And so, especially when it comes to plating, you'll see one thing and then everybody's doing the same thing. And so if you find someone that has their own point of view and they're not following, they're leading, to me that's what makes an interesting chef, I would say, right now. Yeah. But I think what most people miss out on here is that being a good chef, part of it is being creative and coming up with a dish. The real art to it is taking that dish and putting it into a system that you can produce that dish night after night.
Yeah, because with consistency.
Right. Anybody can pick up the French Laundry Cookbook and over time master those dishes. Good luck taking that dish and putting it and try to serve it in a restaurant. It's very, very different. And it's always great to work under a mentor or a few before you open a restaurant. But mistakes along the way, I think early on, thinking that a restaurant is all about the kitchen, and then very quickly learning that it's about the entire operation. People will come to a restaurant because they hear there's good food. They'll return because the hospitality is great. And so everything has to be in balance.
So what, every little detail?
Everything. And I think early on, I learned a lesson from Mondrian that the business deal has to be great.
And it's so hard as a leader. I mean, I feel like we struggle with this. Well, I had a vision, and maybe someone has a slightly different vision, so that's okay.
And you want to encourage that guy, because that's your job.
Exactly, encourage you.
You want to motivate people, and that's how you keep you motivated.
Like a small change, but then.
Yeah. And
knowing where to draw that line.
Exactly, knowing where to draw that line is the hard part. And this is, I think, that is what's important. I think in any business, your business is always evolving. You don't open a business and say, well, that's it, it's done, it's finished. It's constantly evolving. You're constantly testing yourself, testing your people who work for you, and that's a way of motivating people. When I say test, I don't mean a written or oral test. It's just this pushing people, but also pushing yourself to constantly innovate and change and keep up. Because I think the second, especially in a restaurant, the second that you're not innovating, you start falling backwards. And you can start, you become stale very quickly. And so, 30 years into the business, you're always struggling in how do you stay relevant? And it's always a question that you ask: how does the restaurant stay relevant? As a chef, how do I stay relevant? And it's just by always just picking everything apart and not letting things just sit.
What's so interesting here is that within the restaurant space, it's so competitive, and so many people have done it before, that it feels like in industries like that, it's really valuable and important to learn. Whereas with a new technology app, it's like literally no one's ever done this before, and so the learning curve there is something that you can kind of invent yourself.
That's right. And even if you look at some of the chefs that are white hot, overnight success usually doesn't happen overnight, and so it's something that you should keep in mind. It's a great time to be in the business. I mean, there are cool things that are happening. It used to be when I came up that if you were doing fancy food, it had to be in a fancy restaurant. Now it doesn't have to be. Now you can do great food, and you can I mean, in a space like this, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Even places
Should have
like
had fancy food at this university.
Fancy food university.
Yeah.
No, but you can take great food, put it in a down and dirty setting, and it's fine. It works now.
You said something that I thought was really interesting around the fact that, if you don't have all the skills, you should put people around you who can help you build the business. What do you look for in those people who you put around you to help you build a company?
Well, again, if you're let's just say you've worked in a few restaurants and you're a chef, find someone who can run the business of that restaurant. Find someone who can run the front of the house. If you look at Gramercy Tavern, you looked at when it became hugely successful. I was in the kitchen 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock at night. Claudia Fleming, who was arguably the best pastry chef in the country at the time, was my pastry chef. Paul Greco, who went on to open up Hearth and Terroir, was running the wine program and running service. Nick Matone was our general manager, who had a ton of experience. He owned his own restaurants. So you had a team of people that were at the top of their game. That's why that restaurant was hugely successful.
So exceptionally talented people with different skills, it sounds like, than some of your skills.
Sure, of course, yeah. And so you want to surround yourself with talent, and you want to attract talent.
How do you get talented people to come work with you?
Easy. I mean, talented people want to work with other talented people. Especially because if you create a collaborative environment, other people want to come and be part of that. And also, if you are that hot restaurant, every young person wants to work there because they want to learn from you. They want to see what's going on. I mean, it just kind of feeds on itself.
Tom, thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful to have you, and thank you all for listening to University.